You need to know that something extremely unusual is happening in the Chinese military. Top CCP generals are being purged, and more could come. Welcome to China Insider. I'm David Zhang. In what is a shock to everyone, the Chinese military rocket force responsible for the Communist Party's nuclear arsenal had their top commanders replaced. Former leadership was purged by Chinese leader Xi Jinping. News reveal its former commanders died mysteriously, allegedly suicide over work stress. What work stress? He was retired. Well, the CCP is currently investigating the first, second, and the third commanders of the rocket force. At the same time, the CCP is launching an investigation into the conduct of the PLA equipment acquisition since 2017, and to find out if there's corruption or disloyalty. One name you might know is Li Shangfu. Now, he is the current defense minister, and of course, he's been sanctioned by the United States since 2018. But that's not all. We're now learning that the strategic support force of the People's Liberation Army could also be under investigation, and its top general was missing at an important event. During the all-important August 1st military celebration, Zhu Gansheng, the commander of the Strategic Support Force, was not present. And that's the service responsible for high-altitude balloons, spy planes, and electronic warfare. Now, guess where Li Shangfu worked? The Strategic Support Force. Yep, everything's connected. Going through Li Shangfu's resume, you will find that in 2017, he was appointed director of the Equipment Development Department of the Central Military Commission. And of course, we know that is where all the equipment acquisition was happening. And so that means of the 5 services of the People's Liberation Army, ground, air, navy, rocket force, and strategic support, 2 of the most technical branch of their military have been shaken up. And there's going to be an investigation into equipment acquisition that could also impact Li Shangfu, as well as, since he's tied to both, the strategic support force and equipment acquisition. What could all this possibly mean, and what is tying it all together? Well, let's talk about it. First of all, what does it mean for us here in the United States? Well, you can think of it like it means the Chinese military is being purged of its fighting power and replaced by loyal individuals who are really not the best of the best. But loyalty to Xi Jinping is the only reason I think that makes sense as to why this is all happening. There's a consensus among the top echelon of the PLA, which is that the traditional sea, land, and air forces are no match to the United States. And the only competitive edge that the PLA has, it's in its space and cyber domain. So that means space warfare, hypersonic glide vehicles, cyber warfare, and near-space warfare. So for the first time in this century, a war over Taiwan could escalate the conflict into outer space, into cyberspace, where the CCP believes that they are on even ground with the United States. And so that says a lot about changes within the rocket force and the strategic support force, which, of course, like I said, are the main forces responsible in those domains. Now, it means that prior to today, within the Communist Party and its military, the opposition to Xi Jinping's leadership was growing, particularly over the potential war with Taiwan. And this thinking seems to stretch beyond just 1 or 2 branches. It is large enough within the military itself. Now, some could say it could be a coup gone wrong. Others think that it's an intelligence leak that caused all this. While they are possible, it doesn't explain the massive number of generals being investigated. To me, loyalty issues are what I think remains the #1 answer overall. Of course, that's a good thing, right? It's a sign to us that the Chinese military is not as strong internally or as cohesive as we are viewing on the outside. And very much there is a reflection of a large amount of dissent. Their military is unwilling to follow Xi Jinping. Now, of course, it's too early to tell if the PLA is a paper tiger, but it does open up the possibility. Well, don't believe me? Let's go into more depth. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to our channel if you enjoy the content so far, and leave a like and comment below what your thoughts are on what's happening to the Chinese military. All right, let's get on with this. So we have to take things back to March this year, right? When the Chinese spy balloon that shocked the entire world happened. It flew over the continental United States, and it brought shame to American national security. But now we're learning that according to some American officials, Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader, was not aware of the spy balloon. While it doesn't seem to make sense that in a world where Xi is supposed to be the dictator and in control of everything, that he's not aware of such a large, dramatic event, a move that could essentially cause us to step into war with China. Potentially, right? If we examine it with the information that we now know, Xi could have very well been blinded. If somebody was trying to launch the balloon to cause something, right? Soon after the spy balloon fiasco unfolded, Xi Jinping looked like he launched an internal investigation into the military, and one thing led to another. There now are two branches of the military so important to the PLA, essentially getting a reshuffle, but purged, right? And if we think about it, there are really only two branches that are capable of operating in that near space domain where they found the spy balloon. That's the rocket force, which controls the nuclear and precision missiles. Or it's the strategic support force, which operates spy balloons and other, things like orbital satellites or near space missions. And then today we're seeing that these two branches have essentially become targets and received punishments. Their top commanders are gone. What does that tell us? But now you might wonder, why would the Chinese commanders want to screw over their own leadership and in fact do it so badly? Well, it's actually very simple. There are generals in the military who don't want to fight a war, especially one that they know they're just going to lose. It's a consensus within the Chinese military that there's internal corruption. The fighting power is not as strong as they're projecting it to be. Unfortunately, though, for those that think this way, they're purged. For example, Liu Yazhou, a former Air Force commander, was recently sentenced to death for opposing the Taiwan invasion. He's been very vocal about this. And the current investigation into the rocket force and the strategic support force will likely result in those generals being sentenced execution or potentially just a heavy prison sentence. And of course, they're going to be removed from the public eye. Now, going back to that spy balloon, if the strategic force truly launched it without authorization from Xi's chain of command, the only explanation was that they were trying to sabotage that Blinken trip to China in an attempt to escalate tension. This is good for them because it means that the US could potentially apply further sanctions. And with the rocket force, there's been rumors that one general's son leaked intel to the Americans. This is the alleged leak. So it's details on the organizational structure, who's in charge, whatever that is, for the rocket force. And the question is, if this is the reason why Xi Jinping purged the top commanders, a dozen of them, leaking intel doesn't start with a bunch of them sitting in a room and discussing what they're going to tell the Americans. So it doesn't make sense that all of them are now being purged. So again, it seems the lack of loyalty is still the case here. Now, as I said, the rocket force is responsible for pressing the nuclear button, right? So Xi Jinping is a dictator. Dictators need nuclear weapons to threaten us. But if those that operate the nukes don't listen to Xi, imagine what would happen, right? Loyalty to Xi Jinping is like the bottom line. It ensures his political security, and that right now is the number one factor in determining what he does in China. Now, there's been rumors circulating that the rocket force, like Liu Yazhou, who was the purged general, does not want to fight a war over Taiwan. He knows it, but the military is so vast, there's many different factions, a lot of elements at play. According to a former military official that I spoke with, he says the corruption aspect and the fighting willpower inside the Chinese military is already bad. If they do fight over Taiwan, it either goes really bad and the CCP collapses, or it forces Xi Jinping to use the nuclear card. That's what dictators tend to do. Without loyalty, we will see the collapse, and that's it, right? You won't launch nukes. But with loyalty, even if they fail to take Taiwan, they now have people who will listen to Xi when he says, press the nuclear button. So purging the generals who can fight, replacing them with people who would just listen is a big factor to Xi Jinping. And this really matters to us, because from this point on, the danger increases, but at the same time, it also decreases. It decreases because Xi replaced the rocket force generals with Navy and Air Force commanders. And as you now know, the rocket force is a technical branch. It requires that people are trained within the force and developed within the force. Its former commanders all come from within the force itself. An outsider from the Navy or the Air Force will never gain the trust and respect of those in the force. And that's a good thing, because it now hinders the development of the rocket force itself while also hindering their fighting power. But that's also the danger. It increases because now Xi Jinping puts somebody who will listen and be the yes man to him. And he's willing to press that nuclear button. So what we have to really watch from this point on is how these two forces, the rocket force and the strategic support force, develop from now on, as now they have been replaced with people who will just say anything yes to Xi Jinping. All right, that's it. Today's episode on the Chinese military, what's going on in there. If you enjoy the content, leave a like and comment below what your thoughts are on the situation. And also subscribe to our channel if you haven't. And also, if you enjoy the content, make sure to share it with your friends and those around you. All right, I'm David Zhang. This is China Insider. We'll see you next time.